This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, and welcome in to the Primetime Podcast here on Most Valuable Podcast. I am joined with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
You're back from Florida, man.
Yeah.
You're back from Florida. How was it?
It was beautiful.
Because we were here in
great.
Chicago. I mean, the weather was nice, but it wasn't as beautiful as it probably was in Florida.
Yeah, it was great in Florida. First couple of days, it rained a little bit. But the next 4 or 5 days, beautiful, sunny weather. Got out to golf, played by the pool. It was a great time.
I think the best thing I saw, because for those of you who do not know, because you don't have Brandon added on Snapchat, maybe some of you do, I don't know. However, from your Snapchat story, my favorite snap from your vacation was, it was a hut that said water sports on it, and it said that you asked the guy, hey, is this where the water sports is? And he goes, no.
Yeah, guy goes, no. Sorry for asking such a stupid question.
At first I'm like, oh, okay. Guy thought, and then I looked down, I'm like, oh, it says water sports on the hut. That was my favorite Snapchat from your vacation, just so you know. But welcome back. We are finishing, I should say finishing, not continuing, finishing our previews. Yeah. We got one conference left, the Big 12 Conference. We're going to get it done these next 2 weeks. We're going to start with the bottom feeders, the bottom 5 teams. Next week, we will do the top 5 teams. And then, Brandon, guess what time it is? Football season. We get to make our predictions, and then we are right into the beginning of the college football season. And we are going to start this Big 12 preview off with the Kansas Jayhawks. And the big thing for Kansas, we haven't said this about any other team, I believe, so far these previews, but over the past 2 seasons, Brandon, how many wins have they had? How many wins have they had over the last 2 years?
I mean, over the last 2 years, I think they've combined for, 2 or 3? I mean, basically, they have not been very good.
Not good at all.
They have not been very good at all, and I can tell you exactly what it's been.
Mm-hmm.
It's been 2. It's been 2 because they didn't get one win in 2015, and in 2016 they got 2. One to open the season, and then one against Texas, a kind of a shocker, against your Texas Longhorns.
That was
24-21 in overtime.
That was a struggling Longhorn team, though. That was Charlie Strong's struggling Longhorn team, not the same Longhorn team we saw against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But coming into this season, the big question, and this is usually the position that we start off with, it looks like the Jayhawks have a choice at quarterback, like many of these teams that we have talked about before have coming into 2017. And the choice for Dave Beatty and the Kansas Jayhawk coaching staff is they can go with a guy who, coming in, he was a sophomore, started the final 3 games for Kansas, and that was Carter Stanley. Started the last 3 as a sophomore. In those last 3, Iowa State, 171 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. Against Texas, that overtime win, 220 yards, no touchdowns, 1 INT. Against Kansas State in a loss, 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They can start him coming into junior season, or they can start the junior college transfer, Peyton Bender, who right now it looks like the main thing that he has on Carter Stanley is that he's got a quicker release and a stronger arm. So I'm going to ask you, Brandon, if you are right now Dave Beatty, are you looking at it and go, you know what, Stanley's the guy to win this job because of what he showed you in the last 3 years? Or are you saying, hey, you know what, I want to see what the transfer has and that quick release and that strong arm to lead this offense?
You said last 3 years for Stanley. Did you mean the last 3
last
games?
Last three games.
I just wanted to put that out there because otherwise we'd have somebody saying, you dumb idiot.
Last 3 games of last year he started.
So he starts those last 3 games last year, and he shows something. You know, he shows that he had some poise and some skills that if you keep that same guy, you know, coming back each time, each game, growing each game, learning more, you know, you're still going to make some mistakes, but you're able to develop a little bit more. I think that that's someone that you want to go with. And that's, again, not to say that you don't want to go with Bender here, but I think you enjoyed what you saw in the last couple of games from your incumbent, I think that's who maybe you go with to start the season. And, you have your quarterback battles in camp, and you go back and forth, and the one guy comes out better over the other one. But if there isn't a clear cut after that, I think going with Carter Stanley is not a bad thing, especially after what he was able to finish with. I think a lot of times guys can take that and lead that into the next season. However, we've also seen it where a guy ends a season on a really, really strong note, then comes back and he's expected to do so well, there's a lot of hype and everything like that, then doesn't live up to it. Mm-hmm. But if it were me, if I'm Beatty standing here, sitting here and talking with you about this, I'm saying I think that I would go with Carter Stanley just because of what he was able to finish with last year, and for being part of that Texas game as well, where you got a victory in overtime. So it showed that you had some fight in you and that he was able to help lead it.
And the more important thing about this competition that they have between these guys, you want to know the fun fact about both Stanley and Bender coming into this year?
Throw a fun fact at me.
They're roommates.
How about that?
Roommates in college. So it's kind of a competition between roommates. And I mean, I'm getting this quote from KansasCity.com. They got a quote from Beatty that says, "I love the competition. We've got two very talented guys there who are operating this offense at a high level. They do a lot of things very differently, but they both do move very well." And the big thing that I look at is, okay, no matter who you got playing the quarterback position, because I kind of have a sense and a feel that Beatty and the staff, they're happy with whoever, because you get the guy who's coming in with Stanley, the incumbent starter, should know the system by now, should come in, know the language, whereas Bender coming in from a different school has to learn that language, but he's got the tools that they obviously like. That's why they went ahead and recruited him. I look at the receivers, though, and last year was a big year for Kansas. Well, big year for Kansas. Most teams would be like, wow, our receivers didn't have that great of a year. They had two guys get over the 600-yard mark, and no Jayhawk had done that in the previous 6 seasons.
I know, that's really impressive. I think that certainly shows that you're moving in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And with a team like Kansas, and I don't want to give any disrespect for you KU fans out there, but it's been a struggle. I mean, we know that it's been a struggle for Kansas. You don't have any wins 2 years ago in 2015, and in 2016 you only get 2 wins. But that means you're moving in a direction. You're moving in the right direction and going up, and I think that that's a positive thing. And then when you see what you're able to do on the receiving end, I think that's good as well. Going back to that Kansas-Texas game last year, Stanley didn't do anything special. I didn't want to make it seem like he did anything special, but he didn't do anything that terrible that hurt him. Threw for 220 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns. And I think probably people would say, well, Shane Buechele lost the game because he threw 3 interceptions, had too many picks. I just want to make clear that up, because you always have people who are, you made him seem like he did a great job, whatever. But I think that for Kansas, seeing those types of strides in a guy who is really going to help you from the receiving core is Steven Sims Jr. And it's really funny because we have talked about where we broadcast as play-by-play and color. We have a Steven Sims as well, not a junior.
A jack of all trades, Steven Sims.
Absolutely, he is. But this guy as well has been a big help for Kansas and is going to be someone moving forward that's going to be a big help for Kansas. And that's what they need. They need guys to be able to step in and be a force and be a go-to guy and be someone who can light a spark for this offense so that they can score some points. I mean, you look back at the last couple of seasons, last season in particular, and you just look at all the games; they just got blown out. I know that's defense.
There were some,
but there's some that you look at and you go, I mean, they have struggled so mightily to even be able to score points and be in a game, and that's where you really, really need your offense to come alive and help you out a little bit more. There were too many where they had single digit, and when I say too many, what I'm seeing on here is 3, but that's too many. You score 7 against Memphis, 7 against Baylor, and 3 against Oklahoma. Now, I understand the last two are very, very good opponents, but still, that is not competitive. And I think that you want to get to the point where you're at least, able to put up some points, 20 points, something.
Well, there are 3 games that I'm looking at. And funny thing, we're going to talk about all 3, 2 of these 3 opponents today, this week. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait for the other one. I'm looking at TCU, I'm looking at Baylor, and I'm looking at Iowa State. More so Baylor and Iowa State, only because Baylor, yes, it was 49-7. However, this is going to be a very different Baylor team this year than it was last year. Art Briles is no longer there. Matt Rule is now the head coach. They have a huge, not just a system change, they have a culture change there in Baylor because of everything that went down with that team and that school and that everything. And then Iowa State, they're a team that was right next to Kansas in the standings, and it was one of the closer games. It was only 31-24. If they could maybe flip the Iowa State game, maybe flip Baylor, the other one, TCU, they're a team that I'm not, they're the odd one out. Yes, it was a 1-point game last year. However, TCU's a team under Gary Patterson. They could just turn it on like that. You think they're going to be bad one year, and boom, they're good. And then you think, TCU, college football playoff, they're not so good. So really, to me, they're the hot and cold one. Really, Baylor and Iowa State are the ones that I look at because Texas, I get you beat Texas last year, but that was a struggling Charlie Strong Texas team. By that part of the season, people were calling for Charlie Strong's head to get him out of town. Tom Herman's going to be in there. That's going to be a completely different team than you saw a year ago. You see Texas on the road this year at their place. Baylor's going to be at home, which will be a very good thing. But Iowa State, that's the big one, and it's on the road this year. If you could flip those 2 games, win one of your non-conferences, I'm looking at that Southeast Missouri State game as the one you can maybe win to start the season. The improvement for Kansas this year isn't going to be get to a bowl game or get to 5. Maybe, to me, the best case scenario is if you win, I want to say 4 games. 4 games, I'd be happy with this season because that means you went in, you won more conference games than you did a year ago. You're winning 2 conference games. That means you got to win at least 2 non-conferences. That means Ohio and Central Michigan, you got to get one of those wins. You cannot go 1-2 in your non-conference portion of the schedule.
No, you certainly can't. And I think that there's going to come a time where there's hope that starts to come for Kansas fans. And I think that that's definitely something that could happen this year. I think some of the things are simple. You can't turn the ball over. You cannot turn the ball over as much as Kansas did. And then also to be able to look at the defense. And the defense was not good last year. But I think that Beattie's going to be able to rely on his, front 7. And I think he's going to be able to rely on those guys in a big, big way. That's going to be very, very important. And if he's able to get back Joe Dineen from a hamstring injury last year, now this guy was looking to be a very prominent defender, very prominent linebacker. And if he has him back, that's going to be a huge boost to the defense, the energy and the lifeblood of the defense. And that's how Beattie has kind of referred to him before. So if he's back and he's at full strength, that's going to be a huge bonus, huge plus for them. And we both know that when you look at last year and the points that Kansas gave up, there wasn't a chance. There wasn't really a chance. I mean, even when I mention that Kansas needed to score some more points, doing so does nothing for them to get a win. It just makes them look a little bit better. But if they're more competitive throughout the game and can limit some of these opponents, some of these better opponents, to instead of 55, how about 35? It looks better. And then you start to have a chance of you get some scores together, you could be in the game. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen overnight. 55-35 on a defense that really did struggle. I'm not saying that they're going to be there again this year. The hope is that they get better. And still, though, if you can cut down on that any bit, 55-45, 40 points, it means you're doing something. You're heading in the right direction. And as a Kansas fan, those are the types of things that you need to be looking at. As, okay, we didn't get a win, but how did we improve from last year?
Well, and here's the thing. It's not going to happen overnight with this Kansas team. And the thing that, and I'm going to get into the main point in a second, but the thing about the defense even that I want to look at is most of the leadership you get on the front four. You get a guy like Dorrance Armstrong Jr., he's going to return. He had 10 sack season last year. You get a guy like Daniel Wise, who was a first-team All-Big Ten selection by Pro Football Focus. And then you also get Joe Deneen Jr., who is your team captain from last year, and last year was kind of cut short after an injury. Can you get him for the entire year this year? The big question that is going to be raised by some people, and I want to say there's going to be some people in the Kansas faith and the Kansas fanship that raise an eyebrow, but most of us outside of that Kansas blue are going to raise an eyebrow that's like, okay, really? After 2 years and 2 wins in those 2 years, KUAD goes ahead and gives Beatty a contract extension. 2-22 in the first 2 seasons, and he gets a contract extension, which went from $800,000 annually to $1.6 million in 2017 with an $100,000 bump each season. And that's why, to me, 4 wins, 4 wins at least. You have to show improvement. And I know KU fans are going to come out and say, well, guys, you haven't touched on how Beatty in his first year had to deal with a scholarship crunch, like numbers, and he's building a roster with getting scholarships back. And I know, that's one of the big things he had to deal with that season, and it's not easy to do that. However, there might be some expectations from the fan base, from outside eyes, now that your head coach is getting this extension after going 2-22.
Ricky, we're in year 3 of Beatty here, and this is the point where people will start to say, well, we're finally going to see his guys. We're going to finally see his guys that he recruited to be on his team. Well, we are going to be seeing those guys. That holds true now like it does at any other time when anyone else would say that. Year 1, okay, I get it. Year 2, all right. Year 3, these are his guys. These are the guys that he wants to be there, and these are the guys that he wants to be able to see produce. So if they can go out there, Ricky, I think it's possible for Kansas to win those first 3 games of their season, with the one road game being against Ohio.
That's going to be the tough one.
And that is going to be the tough one. So that would be what I think is the kind of the game to watch for Kansas, and the key game. I'll say the key game on this schedule, and people are probably going to be going, "You're kidding me! All these other teams on the schedule, and you're going to pick out at Ohio?"
Well,
yes, because
you're not going to compete with Ohio or with Oklahoma.
You're not going to beat Oklahoma. I mean, unless
Oklahoma State.
You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it this year. I mean, if by some miracle, because they do happen,
like if Baker Mayfield gets injured,
if he gets injured, of course, but if by some chance that happened, okay, great, but no one's expecting that. But if you can take out and pinpoint a game like in Ohio, where if you win those first 2 against Central Michigan and Southeastern Missouri State, if you win those 2 to start and you're 2-0, and then you beat Ohio on the road at Ohio, who gave Tennessee a good run last year in their game, Tennessee, I think that is when you go, all right, we're moving in the right direction. We're looking better. We're feeling better. I've got hope as a fan. This team is coming along. The guys that Beatty went out and got, they're making a difference. They're making an impact. He's making an impact. That's big. Then you go on and you lose to the next 4. It doesn't help. But what I'm saying, they probably wouldn't, because Iowa State is in there, and you could beat Iowa State. They're not a great team.
I think Iowa State and maybe Baylor. I think Baylor, you can get them with kind of the whole culture change that is going on there. Plus, a big thing is they don't have Jarrett Stidham anymore. He is not on that team. This is a Baylor team that might be primed for the picking. However, we'll get into Baylor later. Will they be competing, or will they be on the bottom half. But those are the two conference games I look at, is Iowa State and Baylor being the ones. Those are the ones I target. Those are the ones that are going to be my wins. And kind of just in oversense to what we're talking about here, like you said, you're not going to go up and beat Oklahoma. How expectation-wise, how 4 wins might sound like a slap in the face expectation-wise, this is a team by Westgate Las Vegas Superbooks. Do you want to guess their odds, Kansas's odds, to win the Big 12 championship this year? Or do you just want me to tell you? It's insane.
Just tell me.
500 to 1. So put your money on Kansas, and if they win the Big 12 championship, you're going to be rolling in the dough.
See, I was just off by a little bit. I was going to say 5,000 to 1.
Yeah, close.
One thing I want to mention really quick because I'm seeing it here.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up on Kansas, is that there's a 2017 Kansas preview, and it is titled "Stop Sucking at Football." Now, if I don't see that as a player, as a coach, and that motivate you
and
even more,
light a fire under your rear end,
and that doesn't light a fire under you, nothing will.
No, and this is where we're going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know. Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I think I said the Rock Chalk Jayhawk. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's late here at the MVP studios, so my English might not be as good as it usually is, but let us know what you guys think down below with your team. What are your expectations? Because really, I want to know from the fan base, what do you guys think? What's a good win-loss number for you guys coming out of last season and your first win season of BD's regime there? So let us know down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into our next team, and that is the Iowa State Cyclones. And for this one, very different. I don't think we've ever started a team preview off this year with one of these two positions. But we're talking about the offensive defensive lines to start this not this prediction, but this preview, because this is a team, an Iowa team that last year, coming into a new head coaching staff with Matt Campbell, they go 3-9. They're a team that, looking especially on offense, they're a team, they've got their quarterback with junior Jacob Park. They're loaded at running back and wide receiver. So really, to me, the big question mark, and this is the position I really want to start with, is the offensive line, because they are a team that I know you had mentioned to me before we started. They are losing 3 or 4 guys on that offensive line.
Yeah.
However, they're going to be getting back Jake Campos. He's coming back from a broken leg, the senior tackle. And then they have 2 young guys, sophomores Julian Good-Jones and Bryce Meeker, who those 2 need to step up along with the senior in Campos. This, to me, is the most important position because of what they lost and what they have. If this group, this 5 guys can solidify, they have talent all over this offense to win a couple more games in 2017.
So, Ricky, I think a good way to kind of put where Iowa State is and has been is that the team overall, team runs pretty well. It's had some pretty good offenses over the years. It's been able to have some pretty good all Big 12 players. But looking at their conference, now not once it feels like have they been able to make a significant dent where they shoot up to the top like Oklahoma did, or as Oklahoma State has been rising to the top, and they're not going away. They're sticking around. They haven't been able to do that. Iowa State, what I remember Iowa State for is basketball. And the Fred Hoiberg,
the president,
Iowa State,
the president of Ames, or the mayor of Ames. That's what it was.
And that's how I remember Iowa State. It's very similar to the team we just got done talking about, Kansas. And that's I think probably the point for a lot of Iowa State and Kansas football players is that they're saying, well, we don't want to be that anymore. We don't want to be the team that people know us for our basketball. And when we say, oh, yeah, Iowa State football, oh, well, they've got a really good basketball team, don't they? Well, we want to be able to say they've got a good football team, too. But something's got to change, though. That's the problem, is that you've been mediocre. You've had, like I said, you've had some running backs that have come through that have been good. You've had some passing attacks that have been pretty strong. You've been able to do some things like that. You get guys mentioned, all Big 12 team. But it's not enough. it's not enough. It hasn't put you over that hump yet. And that's the point of trying to find your identity, and they're working on that now. But how much longer is it going to take as you see other teams fly past you to get to the top, as you see Texas, based on what they end up doing this year, you'd like to think that they'd be better and that they'd be moving back towards the top. Texas getting back there, and you haven't been there. And if Kansas jumps you, then is it going to be Iowa State at the bottom, or is it going to be Iowa State moving up along with Kansas up towards the top?
And I mean, when it comes to Iowa State, looking at their schedule from last year, we talked about some close games for Kansas. Iowa State had a ton of them, because basically how their season went was after starting 1-4, where they lose to Northern Iowa in a close upset game. Then they completely get blown out by fake ID specialists, according to Colin Cowherd, in the Iowa Hawkeyes. And then they lose on the road at TCU before winning against San Jose State. This was a team early on that just was getting decimated, except for that the San Jose and the Northern Iowa games. However, late in the year, they started catching their stride. They were competing with teams like, you look at the Oklahoma game. That was only a 10-point win for Oklahoma, who was ranked 14th at the time. Kansas, I know that's not a highly ranked team, but they beat them. They go ahead and beat Texas Tech, which is supposed to be a high-rate offense with Ryan Gosling's lookalike down there. They beat them 66-10. But then other close games. Kansas State, 31-26. Oklahoma State going on the road to play them, only losing by 7 points, and then losing by only 3 to Baylor at home. This is a Iowa State team that I am more confident than I was in Kansas of flipping the script a little bit and winning a few more games than they did a year ago. Because like I said, Baylor's going to be a question mark to me. Kansas State, that's a winnable game for Iowa State if they can catch them on a bad one. I still don't think you beat Oklahoma. I still don't think you beat Oklahoma State. TCU, they really blew you out. I mean, I guess them in West Virginia, you might have a chance, but I'm giving those two to them at this point. But I look at this team. You can beat Texas Tech, Kansas, Baylor, and maybe Kansas State. This could be a 4-win team in the conference part of things. The big thing is that non-conference, though. You get Northern Iowa again. They beat you last year. And then you get Iowa again. Yeah, Akron, you should beat them. But the thing is, on top of the 4 wins I had you in the non-conference, can you be a little ballsy and sweep your non-conference? Or at the least go 2-1 with a loss to Iowa?
Ricky, I'm sitting here and listening to you say these things and looking at what they have offensively, looking at what they have defensively, what they've got coming back, and kind of maybe some of the holes that that they'll have to fill. 3-9 is not exactly what this team should be.
No, on paper they look a lot better.
Absolutely no way. No way that they should be 3-9. They should be much better with the quarterback that they have that cemented himself in that spot, especially last year. I mean,
they should at least be a 5-6 win team, maybe even 4 at the least.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have a running back duo that could be one of the best in this conference. You have an all-star wide receiver who could be a very legitimate NFL talent. You've got a defense that's pretty solid. The part that I look at and go, all right, you're going to have to fill some holes, is that offensive line that you already talked about. Defensively, you have to fill a couple of holes with some guys that won't be returning. But you look at a secondary and a linebacking group, the secondary will be the strongest part of this defense, I believe. The linebacking core should be pretty solid. I think that, Campbell's got a lot of things to work with. And if these guys aren't able to produce, if we're not able to see more wins for Iowa State, then what's the problem here?
I got 3 guys, that, especially defensively. I like how you mentioned the defense, where I agree with you. Secondary and linebacking. Secondary is probably the best unit on this defense. To me, like I've said, going back to the beginning, I'm going to be looking at the front four. And to me, there are 3 guys coming in, all junior college transfers. You got Matt Leo, you got Ryan Lima, and you got Camilo Tongamoa. These guys were JUCO transfers that could have gone somewhere else. They could have played at a number of different Power 5 schools, but they chose the Cyclones. Why did they choose the Cyclones? It wasn't the record, I'll tell you that. It was the chance to get on the field early, to play sooner than they would at maybe other schools that were performing a little bit better. So to me, I'm looking at those 3 guys. Someone out of those 3 coming in needs to step up, needs to make this defensive front solid so that the linebackers and safeties and the corners, that secondary unit, can lean on that defensive front. This Iowa State team, I would not be surprised if they are a little better this year. Because, I mean, you look at their schedule, I already mentioned the non-conference, but it's kind of a flip of what it was last year, where you get Texas and Oklahoma up front. Cool. Those could be some tough opponents. I'm probably putting those as losses right now. But you get Kansas, they're at home. You get Texas Tech, yeah, it's on the road, but you should be able to beat them again. Your toughest stretch to me is TCU, West Virginia, Oklahoma. And then at the end of the year, yeah, it's 2 road games. That's probably the toughest part of this. But you get Baylor and then Kansas State. If you could win those last 2, I know they're on the road, but if you can win those last 2, maybe get to 4 wins. And then, like I said, it's all about the non-conference. What can you do there? Can you beat Iowa? Iowa's a big one. I was talking you guys up in the Iowa preview, and Iowa Hawkeye fans let me have it that I was talking this Iowa State Cyclone team up. This team should be a lot better, though, than it was last year at 3-9. The question is, can they get everything going both offensively and defensively, and how are other teams in this conference going to perform?
Well, this Iowa State Cyclones team, much like the Kansas team, in my opinion, the first 3 games are winnable games, and you very, very realistically could start off 3-0.
Even at home again? I mean, is it because it's at home against Iowa?
Well, look at Iowa, Ricky. We've already talked about them. We don't necessarily. I thought that we were on the same page, but I do have to remember, it has been a little bit, that Iowa's not necessarily going to be anything uber special in the Big Ten. And I'm not saying that Iowa State is this uber special team in the Big 12, but I think that you do have the game at home. It's almost like in the sense of a Cubs-White Sox rivalry game. You know, you've got the Chicago teams. If you've got the home field advantage, that's a big thing. So for Iowa State to have the home field advantage there, I think that that's important. But at the same time, Iowa isn't the team that they were 2 years ago. Will they still be a team that gets 8 wins? Yeah, they should be. But I still don't see that why Iowa State wouldn't be able to come out and beat them. Both teams have a shot of winning that game. I don't think it's going to flop high one way or another. It could be 50-50 split of who wins that one.
That's a game where, in my mind, I have it in that sense, where it's a rivalry game, any given Saturday for that one. But the only thing that makes me nervous about that game and why I say either 3-0 or 2-1 is because of the past history with this. Last win that the Cyclones have against Iowa was 2014. And if we go back to 2000, they have 8 wins in the last 17 years in this rivalry. And the thing that I kind of find a little humorous, it's a fun fact, another fun fact for these previews, all but I want to say 1 or 2 of these meetings where Iowa State has won has been more than 3 points. You had a 10-point win in 2000. You had a 3-point win in 2001. A 5-point win in 2002. That was the only other time they won more than 2 straight. 2005, that was your blowout, 23-3. But other than that, 2-point win in 2007, 3-point wins in 11, 12, and 14. This game's either going to go one of 2 ways, Brandon, in my mind. If it's a blowout, Iowa's winning this game. If it's a close game, the Cyclones are winning this game. That's the two ways I see it. Blowout Iowa, close game Cyclones. That's what I've got going down.
And Ricky, I truly just don't feel like this would be a blowout. Only because I think that Iowa doesn't have necessarily the same weapons that it did at one point in these last couple of years. I mean, I know 2014 was when, like you said, the Cyclones were able to get that win, but in that time, Iowa's 2015, 2016, they had some weapons there. They no longer have some of those same weapons, and I think Iowa State has kind of loaded up a little bit more. So it's a much more, I guess, maybe even playing field there, where it's a much more winnable game for Iowa State. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I think, Iowa State is all the way up here.
I keep wanting to do the same thing, Brandon. I keep wanting to do the same thing. You don't know how many times in my head I've paused for a second because I've almost said Ohio State. I've almost said Ohio State instead of Iowa State. So I've almost done the same thing you just did.
I said it instead of you saying it.
I got one question, though, for you.
I do want to continue and to finish the point.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish it off.
I think realistically, they can win those first three. Will they? I'm not saying they will, but it's very realistic that they could. They come home against Texas. Texas with a very good quarterback in Shane Buechele. I like him a lot. I like their head coach, not as much as you do. You have a crush on him, but I like him as well. Then you go on the road against Oklahoma. We know that's going to be a tough one. So if you could end up 3-1 or even a, oh my gosh, 4-0 before you go on the road against Oklahoma, that could be pretty good. Sets a really good tone. Then after that, it's Kansas, Texas Tech, always a high-scoring affair with Ryan Gosling Jr. And then the rest of the season, TCU, one of those kind of a toss-up, I think. And Baylor, Kansas State, like you mentioned, with Baylor, Oklahoma State, a tough opponent, but it's interesting. Realistically, I do think that Iowa State could win 7 games. They could win 8 games. But at the same time, if things go, unfortunately, not so well, they could only win 4 or they could only win 5.
What year did you start college, Brandon?
2011.
2011. So the last time Iowa State was in the postseason was your second year of college. It was the year I graduated with my undergrad. It was the last time that this team was in the postseason.
You're an old man.
How did they do it? Funny story, exactly like you said. They went 4-1 in their first 5 games, winning 3, losing 1, winning the next. And then they won 2 more in that non-conference against Baylor and Kansas. The big thing, though, they got a big win that year over 13 TCU. And that was on the road. That was a big 37-23 win for them. I think Iowa State needs to have a similar season this year. If you're going to want to end this postseason drought, and I'm going to ask you the question of can they, but before I do that, I'll give my answer first. If you want to end this postseason drought, you have to, I'm going to say go at least 3-0 in the start. If you could replicate what you did in 2012, and go 4-1 in your first 5, you're golden. Have a big win on the season, maybe against Texas, maybe even against an Oklahoma or an Oklahoma State. This is a team that I could see at the best sweeping their first 3, beating Kansas, beating Texas Tech, and then winning the last 2 at Baylor and at Kansas State to go possibly 7-6 wins. So this could be a prime year for me that this team could end its postseason drought. What do you think? Does Iowa State and the Cyclones end the postseason drought this year?
Postseason in the sense of a bowl game?
Yeah, a bowl game.
Okay.
Yeah. They're not. We're not talking college football.
I was going to say, I wanted to make sure you hadn't lost your mind.
A bowl game, postseason.
Could they end it this year? Honestly, give me a minute here because I got to go through the schedule. I didn't have it in my mind of how many wins they actually were going to get. I told you how many they could get, but I didn't. Okay, so let's say they win the first 3.
like you said, that they will.
Let's say they don't beat Texas. They win those 3. They beat Kansas 4. Let's say they get Texas Tech 5, TCU 6. Well, 5 these days is a bowl game. This year might be even 4. We need to add another one.
We're just adding bowl games at this point. The most valuable podcast bowl.
The bowl.
Yeah.
Just so. Anyways,
you're probably
sick of us just talking here, but yeah, I think they have a very realistic shot of doing it because with what they have, again, you can look on a lot of things at paper and say, okay, this is going to be good, and then all of a sudden they get out there and they turn into the San Francisco Giants of this year.
Yeah,
but they can. Offensively, they've got it. Defensively, they've got it. They've got a head coach who knows what he's doing. He's smart. He's talented. He's got the talent. If they can't do it, I would be disappointed because I know that they can. So I think that they have a very realistic shot to do so.
Well, this is where we're going to turn the question on to you guys. Cyclone Nation, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What are you looking like coming into this year? Also, do you guys have what it takes to end your postseason drought? Let us know down below what you guys think down in the comment section. But Brandon, we are going to move on into our next team, and that is going to be the Baylor Bears. And this is possibly the most interesting team on this preview, this entire preview. Any conference that we have talked about thus far, this is the most interesting team to me, only because we talked about what seems like light years ago about the scandals surrounding Baylor, which led to the departure of Art Briles. We've talked in the past about when they hired Matt Rule and how he's going to change things, but now we're actually to the season. And Matt Rule, brought in from Temple, was signed on a 7-year contract and was given the task to clean up what was left behind by the former regime, everything that was going on. My question to you, before we get into X's and O's, just to kind of get it off the table and check the box saying that we talked about it, do you think that the kind of scandal that we've talked about in the past will hang over this Baylor football team this season and might impede their progress or impede their record in 2017?
I don't think so. I don't think that Matt Rule will allow that to happen. He sees a tremendous opportunity to be at Baylor, and he has said that Baylor's not running from the past, rather learning from it. They're committed to getting the wrongs of the past corrected. And I think that when you have a head coach that comes in, acknowledges that there has been something wrong done in the past, but not focusing on that, but focusing rather on the future and being able to move forward and move on and play football, which is what you and I as well should be.
Yeah.
We have the horse is dead. The horse is dead.
We don't need to beat it.
We have talked about it. We all know that what happened was a terrible thing, but we also know that these guys who are playing football now had nothing to do with that. Had nothing to do with that regime, had nothing to do what was going on at that time, and now it is time to talk about Baylor football and what they're going to be doing on the football field. And I think that, again, Matt Rule is the right guy. He very much seems like the right guy to come in, acknowledge, and move forward.
I'm going to ask you this then. Now that, like I said, got it off the table, checked the box, pushed it off. It is no longer on the table. We hit that topic right and simple at the top of the preview, just to say we hit it. Here's my first big question, though. And to me, this is the biggest question for this year. Kind of like Kansas, we talked about with them. We're going to have to make a quarterback choice coming into this year. You got two guys. You've got sophomore Zach Smith, who has the stronger arm and is expected to be the starter. But then you also have a graduate transfer from Arizona in Anu Solomon. I'm going to ask you, Do you think Zach Smith being the guy from last year coming into because it's a new head coach. It's not like, well, we can go off of last year. No. Both these guys coming into a new system, coming into a new coaching staff. The language and everything is new to both of them. If you're Matt Rule, do you lean on a guy that Baylor had a year ago, or do you go with the graduate transfer who might not have the stronger arm in a new Sullivan? What are you picking?
Well, what Matt Rule has said is that with him coming in, it's not fair for him to pick one guy right away, and that he will take as long as he possibly needs to see every single thing that he can from all quarterbacks to make an accurate decision of who is going to be the one that is their opening game starter. And I think that's very important. I think with him coming in and saying something like that, it doesn't matter who was here and he's going to be the guy, or it doesn't matter okay, we want to go completely new. We're going to go with a transfer who came in and we're going to go with him. No, we're going to go with the best guy. And he is making to state that as a point of going with the guy who he sees the most talent in. And whether or not that takes all the way until the end of the spring and everything like that, in the summer to do that, or if it's a week before the game. I guess it's kind of the same thing. I guess what my point is that whether or not it takes a very long time or it doesn't take as much time, he wants to be able to make sure he has seen everything that he needs to see to know. And now, most people are probably saying, you haven't answered Ricky's question, Brandon. You're right, I have not. But I have given the point of what Matt Rule is going to do. And that's basically what you care about. Well, and you don't necessarily care who I think's going to win it. You care about who you think he's thinking of. I'm
going to piggyback off of that, though, because I'm looking at an article here from yesterday basically talking about Baylor's Tuesday practice, and this is from WacoTrib.com, so the Waco Tribune. And there's some quotes in here that I just want to get out there from Matt Rule, and then we can talk about them. The first one is, they asked him about practice. He goes, "Practice was not very good today. It was a soft football team out there. Camp has been hard, and today was the last day of classes. There were a bunch of guys feeling sorry for themselves. Overall, the lack of leadership on offense really showed itself today," end quote. The second one, "Toughness has been the issue. We knew it was going to be an issue based upon the offseason. Will our guys do things at a high level when the adversity strikes, when it's really hard? Up until now, they've been really good at it all camp. Today was the first day they showed that crack. So we exposed it and see what they'll do moving forward," end quote. Before I go into the third one, which is the quarterback, what do you think from that, hearing that as an outsider from the Baylor circle? You don't have those Baylor tinted glasses on because neither of us are Baylor football fans.
Well, I think that whenever you hear the head coach saying that we saw a soft football team out there on the field and no leader,
that's an insult.
And you're openly saying that. I mean, you can say that in the locker room and say, "You guys, no one's stepping up. No one's a leader out there. I don't see anything from any of you." That's one thing. That is one thing. You expect to hear that every once in a while from your head coach if he is not liking what he's seeing. It's gonna happen. But to be able to say that where the media is able to pick it up and make that into a story, then he's very upset. That is very upsetting then for a coach. And I think sometimes, though, it's almost a tactic to you put it out there, the players see it, the players hear it, people are talking to the players about it, and they're like, all right, well, we got to change that. We got to change that because it can't be like that all season long. Well, so sometimes I almost feel like it's a tactic.
I kind of like it.
It's a tactic for the head coach.
I kind of like it only because, I mean, some people might see it as like, you know what, keep it in the locker room. But no, I'm the kind of mindset where it's like I love when the coach isn't afraid to call out players to the media. Where it's like in his quote, did he say any individual names? No. And I'm not talking about saying like, oh, well, you know what, blah, 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 need to do better. No. just as a unit, not afraid to call out the guys, not afraid to keep them accountable, because who's the first person that's going to knock them down? The media, us. We're going to be talking bad about them if they come out and lay a stinker
That's what we do.
on Saturday. The other quote, though, that I wanted to read, this one has to pertain to the quarterbacks. He says, I thought both quarterbacks played really well today. That was a positive. They made a lot of good plays and gave the receivers a chance to make plays on the ball. You're always looking for a quarterback that has that certain something that's special, it. Right now, they're both learning, so it might take them a couple more weeks to really see that come out, end quote. And to me, the big thing kind of circling all this back in to who might play as quarterback, the one thing that just based off of what I'm seeing here, and I know this is a microcosm of just one practice and then my reaction to it, but give me whatever quarterback, because both of them have the skill. That's what basically he was saying from that quote. Both of them know how to have a good practice when the team doesn't. Which one's going to give me the better leadership? That's the one that's going to win the job.
Tell me, what was the date on that?
That was August 8th.
So I'll tell you something back on June 6th.
Okay.
And this is a Sports Day article.
Yeah, this was yesterday as we're recording this on Wednesday.
Sure. So this is a Sports Day article from Matt Mosley, who's a contributor there. The question was, it seems like Zach Smith and Anu Solomon are the two guys in the race, with Charlie Brewer somewhere in third, but that could he make an upset of these two guys? And Mosley, from being able to watch them, believes that it's a completely two-man race between Zach Smith and Anu Solomon, with Zach Smith being the guy who seems to have a better grasp of the Baylor system, which is something that is pushing more in his direction. He knows the personnel better, and he also points out to his really good performance in the bowl game last season as well. He said that Anu Solomon has been really great working with both of them, trying to help the two quarterbacks, Smith and then Brewer, as much as he possibly can. And then does make mention that Matt Rule really, really likes Charlie Brewer, but sees it as a huge doubtful that he will be playing or starting as a true freshman, but the staff certainly does love him. And so I think that right there would put Smith in the lead because of what he does have. I think at the end of the day, a lot of times, the experience that you have as the incumbent starter does help to give you a leg up, can help to give you a leg up with the other guy coming in. Sometimes that other guy can get the job, though, if he's just that much better talent-wise. But I think that helps to show you've got two guys as the front runners with a third guy who's going to be there. It just may not be this year.
Well, and the thing when it comes to Charlie Brewer, I expect him to be redshirted, and the only reason why is just look at the situation right now. I mean, Solomon's a grad transfer. Usually with graduate transfers, they usually have, I'm unsure if he has 1 or 2 years, but most of the time they only have 1 year of eligibility. So it's like if he starts, he's out anyways. But then you got Zach Smith. He's a sophomore. Why not redshirt Brewer? He's a redshirt freshman then next year when Smith is a junior. So it'll be his junior season, he's a redshirt freshman. His senior season, he's a redshirt sophomore. And then making it that if he progresses like you want, he could be in line to be your starter year 3. That important year. You talked about it in our Kansas preview. That year where it's like, you know what? This is Matt Rule's team. These are Matt Rule's guys. And you're putting Charlie Brewer, the guy that you like, out there. Then it all plays in. He's got to progress into what you want. He can't take any steps back or stay stagnant. He's got to grow as a player in his what would be 3 years, because they have the redshirt year in practice and then the redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore seasons. That's where I kind of see the kind of plan for Brewer to play out. But this is a Baylor team. Like I've mentioned in the 2 previews that we've had this week before it, this is a team I have a huge question mark about. Only because you look at the talent that they have on paper. Wide receiver, they've got the talent, and the big guy is going to be Denzel Mims. Where they're even saying he's going to be he could be the next in the lineage of like Kendall Wright, Terrence Williams, and Corey Coleman from this Baylor team. Then you look at the running game, you got Terrence Williams back there, given the quarterback, whoever it may be, a solid option in the backfield. My big question is going to be, can Matt Rule get this team going to match because I kind of feel like the expectations might be, well, hey, we've had back-to-back 10-win seasons. We want that again. And it might not be the same. I'm not saying this is going to be a team where it's like, wow, 4 or 5 wins on the season, but it might not be a 10-win season this year for Baylor in Matt Rule's first year.
And it may not be. And I think that that's okay.
Oh, I'm not saying there's anything. I'm just saying the expectations might be a little high because it was like that before.
But that's what I'm saying is that it's okay that it's not a 10-win season in season number 1. If it is, wow, that's awesome. That's great. That's even better. That's should be exceeding the expectation. But if Baylor comes out and it's an 8-win season, if it's a 9-win season, that should also be acceptable. But I would even say though, if you slip below 8 and you're going down to 7 or 6, that's a little bit under the expectation. I think 8 or 9 is very doable for this Baylor team. I think that they have a lot of really good pieces on offense, and what I've been able to continue to read after reading the post to you about back in June, this quarterback situation is an interesting one, but a good one because these quarterbacks it's a close competition, and the quarterback's coach, the head coach, they're really liking what they're seeing from all of these guys. That's a good problem to have.
I want to correct myself. I got to learn to read. The back-to-back 10-win seasons wasn't for Baylor. It was for Rule at Temple. So at Temple, he had back-to-back 10-win seasons coming into this year. It wasn't Baylor that I was talking about. It was Rule himself had back-to-back 10-win seasons. And some fans might think, yeah, you know what? We can do that with the talent that we have, especially on offense, to get it done. But kind of to wrap up this.
But I just want to go back to mention you not being able to read or not being able to read.
I just wanted to correct myself. Get it out there.
I still think that a 10-win season is an over expectation. 8 wins, 9 wins I think should be very good. But I would say
Do you
that
have the schedule in front of you?
I would say that 6 or 7 would be. I would say that that would be under expectations, and I'm pulling up the schedule right now. Again, their first 3 games,
they can go 3-0.
They should win them. Oklahoma at home could be a competitive game there. At Kansas State, I would call that one probably a win. Oklahoma State, a loss there. West Virginia, don't know. Texas, don't know. Kansas, a win. Texas Tech, a win. Iowa State, a win. TCU, a win. So 7, for sure. And an 8-win season would be attainable.
This team needs to because last year it wasn't like they were a terrible team the whole year. They started out 6-0. They were 6-0 to start, and then lost 6 straight to finish at 6-6 before beating Boise State in the Cactus Bowl. Almost said the Citrus Bowl. The Cactus Bowl. The thing that I don't like about this schedule is Kansas is one. I don't like how it's on the road. However, like I said, maybe I'll lean towards Baylor. Maybe I'll lean towards Kansas. It kind of feels weird saying that with Kansas. I don't like how you got Kansas State and Oklahoma State on the road. Those are going to be tough places to play. I know you beat Oklahoma State last year, but part of it could have been because you were at home for that game. Yes, you get Texas at home. That's big. Yes, you get West Virginia at home. You even get Oklahoma at home. That just because it's at Baylor, you might be able to throw, maybe they can upset the Sooners in that game. But I look at this team and I think 3-0, and then possibly Kansas, Iowa State. But like I said in their previews, I wouldn't be surprised if they won. Those are 2. Kansas State and Texas Tech are 4. You can get back to 7 wins this year. So I would say it's 7-9. 7-9 wins, but 2 of those coming between the other teams, the Oklahoma State, Texas, the TCUs. That's where those other 2 come in. You can get 7, possibly get 9. If you play really well, you can get 10. The whole thing about this Baylor team, though, is are we going to see more days like we saw in that article that I presented? Because this is a team that is going to, Matt Rule is going to need a leader, especially on offense, to be out there. And if this team does not have the leadership on the field to be an extension from Matt Rule, it's going to be hard to win football games this season.
I agree with you. I think that the less we see of that and hear of that, the better it means things are for Baylor.
But, I mean, let's be honest. Hearing it at this point, this is where the coach throws it out there so that it's like, you know what, we want to fix that problem now before we get to the season. But I want to throw this on to you guys. Baylor Nation, let me know what you guys think down below. What do you expect from this team in year 1 from Matt Rule? Who is going to be the starter? Is it going to be Smith? Will it be Solomon? What are you looking for from this team? Let us know down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into the next team, and we got the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And we are, like, you know what's the one thing I always think of when I think of Texas Tech?
Touchdown, Red Raiders!
Crabtree pulls free,
Touchdown, Red Raiders!
That's what I always think of when I think of your team, Red Raider Nation. But I got 2 questions for you to start this one off, Brandon.
I will only answer one.
Okay, well, I'll ask you the most important one first then. The first one has to do with a guy we love to talk about, the Ryan Gosling lookalike in Cliff Kingsbury, the coach that goes on the recruiting trails, and moms just fall in love with him. They just have a thing for the Ryan Gosling lookalike. But this is going to be his, 5th season heading into 2017. 8-5, 4-5 his first year, 4-8, 2-7. Then 7-6, 4-5, and then last year 5-6 or 5-7, 3-6. Should Kingsbury be on the hot seat though, heading into his 5th year at Texas Tech?
Yes, and the reason that I say yes is because of the conference that you are in, and I don't want to say that it's an easy.
Probably one of the easiest.
I don't want to say that it's the easiest.
One of.
But But then again, the question would be, well, then which one's the easiest?
Maybe the Pac-12?
And it would probably be,
No.
Pac-12 is tough. But this one is, when you look at everything, the easiest to win. And I look at this, and I think that Texas Tech, with all the high firepower offenses that they have had and the amount of points that they can score in a real hurry. I mean, when you look and they score 69, 55, 59, 55, 38, 59, you should be able to win many more games than 5. You should. And when you can't do that and you find yourself near the bottom of the Big 12 and you're scoring all those points, I just don't know how you're able to do it. How are you able to score 524 points and be one of the bottom teams in the Big 12? The only other 2 teams that scored over 500 points were Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and respectively finished 1st and 2nd in the Big 12 conference. To be scoring that many points and find yourself all the way down at the bottom, it's unacceptable because the points that you give up, 522, 2 less points than the amount that you scored. You can't do that. You have to have some bit of defense to be able to win here. Your offense is good. Mm-hmm. We can see that. Defensively, you've got to change something. I mean, how blatant does that stare you in the face that you have to change something? And how crazy would that be making Texas Tech fans knowing if you could just have a defense, you could have a couple of wins, and you could finally try and make a run at the top of the Big 12, which again is doable. We've talked about it.
I'll tell you how. You ask how you can win 5 games with having the defense like it is. Have a top 10 quarterback and have arguably the best quarterback that your school has ever seen in Patrick Mahomes. Like, I pulled up the stats just to see where Texas Tech was team defensively, and I was reminded yet again, guess who led the league in passing yards last year among quarterbacks? Patrick Mahomes, 5,052 yards. That's, though, how Texas Tech has always been. It's been all about the air raid offense, and it's like...
But
it's
this
like
is,
the Big 12 versus the defense.
But this is almost a problem, Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost an
problem.
it's almost an epidemic.
It's a
because
problem.
what a waste of good quarterbacks to not win anything.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you won the Hannah Montana Bowl? Good for you, Johnny. No one cares.
The Hannah Montana
if you
Bowl.
don't win. That's going to be the new one this year.
Oh, I love it.
What if you could finally have a quarterback and an offense that gets to a playoff game? Mm-hmm. What if you could finally have an offense that gets to a legitimate bowl game that was able to find themselves in the Rose Bowl? What if you could do that? Then you put that high-flying offense on display in a big arena, on a big stage, and they get to perform. Mm-hmm. And then it finally means something. Because right now, you're putting guys out there, you're putting them through, they're getting some good stats. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's just all they're able to put up. I participated.
Do you know
that's what they're able to put up?
Do you know their point, like Texas Tech's point differential last year? Like how many points they scored compared to how many they let up? +2. +2. Like it's great that you're scoring over 43. I think it's 43.7. Top 5 scoring offense in all the land last year, to kind of put it in a kind of medieval twist. However, you're giving up 43.5 points per game, which if we're going from lowest to highest, the 128th ranked defense in points per game last season. So Kingsbury, I think, should be on the hot seat, because another thing I'll throw out there is 13-23. That is his record in Big 12 games, and that simply just is not good. However, I do not want Texas Tech Red Raider fans thinking that, you know what, why did I click on this preview? They're just shitting on my head coach. There is one position that is the most, besides like we mentioned the defense, we could talk the defense until we're blue in the face.
No need to. It's
the
not
point
changing.
is the defense needs to get better, which I don't think it will be under Kingsbury. But the big position coming in that we're talking about is quarterback, because this team, this Texas Tech team, really it comes down to one guy. It comes down to the senior who was a 2014 Iowa transfer in Nick Shimanek. I was practicing in my head. Shimanek. And he's apparently going to be the heir apparent to Mahomes. You want to know why, Brandon? Do you want me to tell you why?
Yes.
All their other quarterbacks have never thrown or have never taken a snap at the FBS level. So really it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to either throw a guy out there that's never taken a snap at the FBS level, or we're going to go with the senior in Nick Shimanek. And I'm not saying that that's a poor choice, but this is a team that it's like, okay, it is all in on this senior, and we're going to see what he's got, because the rest of our quarterbacks have never played at this level, have never taken a snap at this level.
And Shimanek, who played in 4 games in 2016, 38 of 58, 464 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. So you get a little bit of a taste there. on what he was able to do last season. And the reason why I have a lot of hope for him is because he is in the Big 12, quarterback, Big 12, on one of the most high prolific Big 12 offenses. He's going to be just fine. But what I do need to say, and just get off my chest really quick, and then have the hate bash come on me from our lovely viewers, and I do truly mean that. We appreciate all of you guys who tune in. But it is the fact that Kingsbury and his defensive staff are doing a disservice to this team by not producing better, by not going and getting better, by not having a focus defensively. Disservice to the team, disservice to the fan base, disservice to the school. That's what he's doing. By not having a better defense, a stronger defense that can hold up with your absolutely outstanding offense, that is a disservice. And I think that you can have strong guys, and I'm not saying that every defensive player on Texas Tech is bad. I'm just saying that
overall they're not good.
They have not held up. They have not been able to collectively, as a group, be able to put it together and finally make an impact that shows on the field, in the standings, and eventually gets you to where you want to be in the playoffs. But that's not happening. And if yet again that does not happen this year, you have to take a look at, yes, you are so happy with what you've done offensively. We could talk about that forever. But defense, which again we also could talk about for a long time, it's not there. And we're not saying that you need to get someone who's from the Big Ten to come over, be the defensive coordinator, and now all of a sudden we're only giving up 10 points a game. No, that's not what we're talking about. Because in the Big 12, you would literally win every game if that's what you did. But someone who can, okay, they're now averaging 20 points a game, 25 points a game. It's unacceptable, the amount of points that you're giving up each game and each season. And it is a disservice to your team, to your school, to your fan base. Enough said.
I don't like the schedule either. When I look at the schedule, like last year, besides going 2-1 in the non-conference, their only conference wins, Kansas at home, TCU on the road, Baylor at a neutral site. The only things I don't like, Kansas you can still beat because Kansas might not be good this year altogether. TCU was an overtime win. It was a 3-point overtime win. That's a coin toss game. That could go the other way this year. Baylor, like I said, I don't know what to think about Baylor this year, if they're going to be good, if they're going to be bad. But that game could flip because of what Matt Rule. I'll put it this way. I got more confidence in Matt Rule than I do Cliff Kingsbury. And the thing I look at with this schedule, Houston, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Texas. What do all four of those teams have in common this year when it comes to Texas Tech?
They are on the road.
They're on the road. So that means you got to play Oklahoma on the road, loss. You got to play West Virginia on the road. Well, they beat you at your place. You ain't going to have much fun playing at their place. That's a loss. Houston's a question mark to me only because Tom Herman's not there. Oh, wait, but where is he? He's at Texas, which by the end of the year, Tom Herman could get his boys on a roll, and that is the most scary place
play the Longhorns. In that Texas game on the road.
Yeah, it's in Austin. So, and I mean, the Baylor game is a neutral site game, so that's technically another road game, but it's a road game for both teams in that neutral site. So, I mean, all of those games, I am not confident in Texas Tech. Like, I could see this year being 1-2 in the non-conference, win over Eastern Washington, maybe 2 if you beat Arizona State, but I'm going 1 win there. Kansas, Iowa State, and that could be it. Like, that is it. Maybe you beat Kansas State, or maybe you beat Kansas State, maybe you beat TCU again. I'll go on their side because of your defense. 3 games: Eastern Washington, Iowa State, Kansas. That's it. Those are the 3 wins that I'm looking at going, yeah, I'm confident the Red Raiders will win.
So I think that even for me, I think that's a little low. because of the fact that we have to remember how good that offense is. If you're going to score 50-some, 60-some points, that is, even don't even think about defense right now. That's going to keep you in just about every game. That's going to keep you in every game. Take out the just about. You're in every game. If you're scoring, and I'm not saying that they're going to do that at each game, but if you're 50s, if you're 60s in the points, every game or around there, you're in it. You're in it, you're probably going to win it. But even into the 40s, you're in the game. Now bring defense in. And
that's where everything falls.
But at the same time, though, you can't expect that Oklahoma State is going to come out. Maybe Oklahoma State comes out and they have a clunker. Maybe it has never necessarily anything to do with the defense. They come out, they just, Mason Rudolph stinks that day.
And I know,
or Oklahoma just stinks that day.
And I know Red Raider fans are going to tell me, but Ricky, that was only a 1 point loss for us last year. It was 45-44 last year against Oklahoma State.
Outstanding. That's 2016. Welcome to 2017. But I think that's kind of the mindset here. Is I think you're underrating them a little bit, as people will tell me, as I've already berated their defense. But they are going to be in too many games with the way that this offense puts up points to only have 3 wins. The defense is such a factor. If we can actually see something change on the defensive side, we see this team catapult to the top. But until then, I still keep them in the 5 to 6 win category.
I won't. With me, 3 to 5. 3 to 5.
Here's where I'm saying. Your first 2, Eastern Washington, Arizona State. You win those 2. Kansas, there's 3. I will say Iowa State, because of the fact of the offenses that you've had for Texas Tech are just so good. So good. There's 4. TCU, I'll put 5. And maybe Kansas State would be 6.
I don't know. The thing that I look at this schedule with is I'm going back to a point that I made. Most of the tough games are on the road. If you look, and I know that you're saying, well, Brandon, it's 2016, welcome to 2017. You got to look at 2016 for some base, though. And the thing that I noticed last year in their schedule is that all but one of their wins, the TCU win, I know that the Baylor one you can kind of count as a road win because it was a neutral site, but it's a neutral site win. All of their wins otherwise, the other 3, SF Austin, Louisiana Tech, Kansas, all came at home. So that means 3 of your 5 wins came at home. 1 came on the road. It was an overtime win. Congratulations for winning it. And then you won the neutral site game at Baylor. Entering 2017, I've already gone over the slew of road games that you have. It's good that you've got Oklahoma State at home, I will say. Yeah, you beat them by 1, or you lost to them by 1 point last year. That could be a game to where the games that we go into, like Oklahoma State, like maybe Iowa State, I'll give you the win. However, I look at last year and I go 66-10. And it wasn't like Patrick Mahomes was hurt in that game. Like, he threw 2 interceptions in that game. I'm just not high on the Red Raiders this year. Not high on them. And the one thing, this is going back kind of the beginning that I'm kind of thinking about now, Kingsbury might, if they go 5-7, let's say they go 5-7.
Okay.
Repeat performance of last year. Kingsbury might be able to save his job. You want to know how he might be able to save his job? If he uses David Gibbs, who is the defensive coordinator entering his 3rd year, as a scapegoat. To me, that's the way he saves the job, because like we look at the defense, this is a Red Raider defense that was ranked last in the nation in both total defense and total scoring defense, yet David Gibbs is entering his 3rd year as the defensive coordinator. So This year, like I said, I've got them maybe 3 wins, 5 wins is my ceiling with them. 3 to 5. I don't think you go below 3. I don't see you going above 5. That doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah.
Most of these games for Texas Tech is going to be the offense is really good and the defense is not as good. And it's going to come down to, well, offense, you got to score more points than the other opposing offense. Take the defense out of it. It's just going to be a barn burner all the way down, and basically whoever scores the more points and gets the more possessions is going to win the game. However, if that team, that offense, creates mistakes, gives the other team more opportunities with the ball, that will hurt them because of the defense they have on their side of the ball.
So here's one thing, again, that I just want to point out about the Texas Tech defense, and don't turn it off. The defense, and I'll give you the absolute stats and facts from last year. The secondary only had 5 picks, 5 interceptions the entire year.
Not good.
And 2 of the 5 were in the opener against Stephen F. Austin. The team was 4-0 when it came up with an interception. The pass rush, terrible. 14 sacks is all they were able to get. And they were not good on third downs. And it says, I mean, right here in the article, the identity of the Texas Tech defense can't continue to be miserable. I think that's how I want to end it. It can't continue. This identity of this Texas Tech Raider defense, Red Raider defense, cannot continue to be miserable. And it cannot continue to be marred in this very, very, very mediocre play. And then be okay. And I say okay loosely because I don't think that they're okay with it. But allow it to continue each and every season.
I'm going to throw out, this is where I'll end it, defensively as well. I'm throwing out 2 names. These are your guys to watch, Red Raider fans, coming in to this year. The first one, Jordan Brooks. He's a linebacker. Recorded 86 tackles last year as a freshman. We need to see improvement as a sophomore this year. Another name, Dakota Allen. He was the leading tackler, or one of them, for Texas Tech in 2015, but spent last season in the junior college ranks. He is now back with Texas Tech. Those 2 guys need to step up. Brooks entering his sophomore year, Allen entering, he went to junior college, came back to Texas Tech this year. Those are the 2 guys that need to be cornerstones if this defense wants to turn it around. But I want to pose the question on to you guys. Number 1, did Brandon and I harp on the defense too much? Is the defense better than Brandon and I made it seem? What do you think? Shimanek coming out, being your starter this year. I know it wasn't officially named, but really he's going to be the quarterback this year. And also I want to know about Cliff Kingsbury. What do you guys think? Should he be on the hot seat? And could he be on the hot seat at the end of this year? Let us know down below in the comments section. But Brandon, let's move on into our last team, and that is going to be the Texas Longhorns. And this is the team I couldn't wait to talk about, guys. This is the team that I've waited all preview to talk about because this could be, Brandon, the most hyped team in the mind of Ricky Widmer coming into 2017. It's all because of one man. All because of one man, and that is Tom Herman.
I know. You're in love with him. You've got a man crush on him.
Cannot wait to see what he can do with this team, and he is where I want to start because for Texas, that is the big change coming into this year. I know we've talked about it in the past, but now that we've gotten closer to football season, what do you think life is going to be like for the Longhorns in the Tom Herman era?
Well, I think that life is going to be a lot more less stressful. I think because of all the crap that they had to deal with, and that Charlie Strong had to deal with as well. They never gave him a chance. He never had a chance. He never had a chance to be successful. They went with him, and then it seemed like almost soured on him right away. So they really did him a really big disservice to him, and I think that that's really sad. But now this Texas Longhorn team, there's going to be a lot more excitement. There's going to be a lot more energy. There's going to be a lot more guys probably in there even more, working that much harder to be back to where Texas football once was, that we all know where Texas football once was. They've got a really good young quarterback, and Shane Buechele showed some great things last season. It's always exciting to see where that young quarterback makes their strides for the next season. We talked about so many already, just in all the previews that we've done, which seems like a million to this point, but it's not. But we have talked about a lot of quarterbacks making the stride to year 2. And it's no different for Shane Buechele, who started as a true freshman and now is a true sophomore. And it's always exciting to see where they go. And he did some big things last year for Texas. In a marred season, he did some pretty good things for them. And how can you not be excited for him under the Tom Herman era, where Tom Herman loves to work with quarterbacks? And Shane Buechele has a very, very good shot of continuing to be the guy to go to here with the Texas Longhorns.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up Buechele, because he's not the only one that this team's returning. They get him. They have experience at running back with Chris Warren III. They also have experience at receiver with Colin Johnson, Devin Duvernay, and then also Armani Foreman and Gerard Hurd as well. So this is a team that, especially on offense, has experience coming into 2017. And this is a team that the reason why they are last this week is they were the highest record of the bottom feeders here in the Big 12. 5-7, 3-6, exact same record as the team we talked about from Texas Tech. However, I don't know about you, Brandon. I'm on the mindset that this Texas team, maybe it could be my little my burnt orange visors that I'm wearing because of my boy Tom Herman, but I think that this team has a better opportunity conference-wise to make the jump forward than the team we just talked about in Texas Tech. And it's going to be hard. They have a tough schedule of, you get Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout, that's neutral site. Tough game against Oklahoma State, but you get them at home. However, one of the biggest games, they got to go ahead and play USC on the road at USC, third game of the season.
That game, Ricky, I am so excited for.
So you hyped for it, Brandon? You hyped?
How can you not be?
How could you not be?
How can you not be? I think it's going to be a really exciting game with USC. We know going to be as good as we expect them to be with Sam Darnold. And this Texas team really going to be in a much better spot than what they were last year. And this is early in the season. You know, this is just what, game 3 of the season? That's going to be an early test right away to kind of see where both of these teams are at early on. I think that's really, really, really interesting. Ricky, I want to get to something really quick.
Okay.
And I want to read something off to you. And this is from College Football News, an article that they have and that they wrote, and I think it's a very interesting article. And the name of the article is Tom Herman, ? Texas, you'd better be right. And let me read a little bit of this to you. They talk about how you have all this money, you could pick whichever college coach you want, and you pick Tom Herman. You pick the guy who lost to a bad UConn team 2 years ago, ruining a possible invite into the college football playoff. You pick the guy who had the college football playoff right there for the taking after demolishing Oklahoma to start last season, and later lost to Navy. Got blown out by SMU, lost to Memphis to finish third in the division of a group of 5 conference. Go ahead, name a college football head coach who flopped as badly as Herman did with a team good enough to destroy OU and Louisville last season, and the next season fell up to a gig as amazing as this. Yeah, Texas, you better be right, and right away, because there's absolutely no honeymoon period with the heater Herman has been dealt. Your thoughts?
The thoughts I have from that is the UConn team. Yeah, that was a surprise. I thought they were going to be. I had them college football playoff bound. Let's put that to the kiss of death. Let's put it to the kiss of death. I had them college football playoff bound. especially late in the year. But that Navy team, I like that team. And they had a good running back in James Conner. So it wasn't like that Navy team, I didn't think it was that much. Like the UConn one, huge surprise. They probably should have beat them. And the Navy one wasn't so much for me. The main difference that we have here is that's how I feel like we may get the split between Power 5, working with a Power 5 talent team and a Group of 5 talent team, to where it's not necessarily the talent isn't as big from FBS to FCS or D1 to D2 or D2 D3 or D2 to NAIA. However, there is a little bit of a talent gap between Power 5 and Group of 5. If quarterback A on Houston had the talent to be the starter at Alabama, guess what? He would be the starter at Alabama. So I kind of look at it where being a Power 5 team should have a little bit more talent, especially at Texas. Should have a little bit more talent than he was looking at. However, like you said, that article kind of gives you a little bit of a question mark. And the thing I was going to say before you read that was I was going to have a bold prediction for this year. Are you ready for it?
I'm always ready for your bold predictions.
October 14th, Texas is going to beat Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout. They're going to beat them, and it's going to be a good win for them. I almost went and said they'd beat Oklahoma State as well, only because they have them at home. But Oklahoma for sure, I am giving that game. I think it's going to be a Longhorn victory, and that could be the game we look at to where, maybe Oklahoma is not a college football playoff team this year moving forward.
So as much as I kind of look at you, just kind of like...
You knew you were going to get one.
I'm just, I'm mulling it over. To go say Oklahoma and Oklahoma State is a little, whoa,
Is it? I mean,
I think it might be.
Oklahoma State's at home this year.
I think it might, both of them.
Well,
both of them, back-to-back are home.
Oklahoma is neutral site.
Well...
Yeah. But it's technically they'll be in the home jerseys.
So... As long as you have, for Oklahoma, as long as you have Baker Mayfield, you always have a shot to win. But I think that Texas is getting, hopefully, to the point where they're able to say, well, as long as you have Shane Buechele, you got an opportunity to win. And seeing what we saw from Shane Buechele last season, he is a smart guy with a great arm who can heave the ball down the field big time and do it well and accurately. Going up against Oklahoma, Oklahoma showed some great things to me last year, especially towards the end of the season. They struggled a bit at the beginning, they scuffled a bit at the beginning, but they came out towards the end and they made a great run. And they were just short of being able to get into the college football playoff. If they have a season like they did of the second half and the final third of their season last year, I don't think Texas can beat them. But if they play like they did at the beginning of the season last year, Texas can certainly beat them. So what Oklahoma team do we get? That's the question. That's the biggest question. What Oklahoma team are we going to see? Are we going to see the team that scuffled in the first 3-4 games of last year? Or are we going to see the Oklahoma team that was thriving at the end of last season?
I just think this Texas team this year, last year, this is a perfect example of, remember in one of the other ones you said, well, Ricky, welcome to 2017. This is the time we can say welcome to 2017. Because like looking at both schedules from last year to this year, here's how I see the Texas Longhorn season going in a nutshell. You start the season 2-1, win over Maryland, win over San Jose State. I am sorry, I am way too high on this Trojan team to give you a win in sunny South California. Trojans with the win with the number 1 overall pick leading the way. Then you go to Ames, you get a win. You go back home to play Kansas State. You get a win. I know you lost by 3 but the Tom Herman effect and how he's going to have this team rolling, giving them a win to Kansas State at home this year. I'm calling the game. It's an upset, but I'm calling it a win against Oklahoma. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Win against Kansas, win against Texas Tech, that's 7. And then I could see wins against Baylor and West Virginia on the road. So this team, to me, I look at it and I think they could be, I'm going to go 6 wins to about maybe 8. 6 to 8 is my window for this Longhorn team.
I could see this team going through the schedule as you did, an 8-5 team, including a win in the bowl. In the bowl game. 8-5 team. I think that's a realistic thing for this Texas team. And if they're not able to get there, and I'll be honest with you, if they're not able to get there, I am kind of probably with the thinking that you are, Ricky. It would be a little bit disappointing, only because the expectation, I think, is so high and the hype is so high, and things that you have going for you with the new head coach and the young quarterback who's still going to be good, who did well last year, making the jump to year 2 and all this stuff, and just all this new culture, this new culture feel around Texas. If they're not able to do that, it will be a bit demoralizing.
No, and for me, the ones that I ran through the schedule a second time, and without my kind of bold prediction in there, Maryland, San Jose State, Iowa State, Kansas State, Kansas, Texas Tech. That's 6. Those are wins that I think money, and I know you got to go out there and play the game. It's easy for me to say it, but money in the bag, put them as wins. Put them as wins. Texas should have limited problems with those teams this year. And I think that we will see an improved Texas team. However, are the expectations for Texas going to be too high? Is it going to be, we've got Tom Herman, boom, we should be a top 25 team? Because, you look at Herman coming in, there is reason to be hyped about him. In his years at Houston as a head coach, 22-4. That's a phenomenal record in 2 years. He was also 6-0 against teams ranked in the AP top 25. 6-0, and that was with Houston, that he was beating teams in the top 25. Now, I know the article that you mentioned played great devil's advocate to that. Yes, they were 2 losses, but UConn and Navy were season killers for the Cougars and where they were. However, the thing that, and this is me getting to that article, getting to another point later, is one of the things that Tom Herman now has in his back pocket, now being a part of a Power 5 conference. How many times so far in this playoff system, Oklahoma's one of them, did we see a team lose one game and still make the playoff?
That's true.
At a group of 5, one loss, especially that team, boom, season killer. However, one loss, and Texas would only need one loss. We're not talking college football playoff legitimately, but going down the line, eventually that's the goal. One loss wouldn't be a killer for Tom Herman at Texas. I expect this season is not going to be a blow the door off just kick the door off the hinges kind of season. I think the Texas will have more wins than it had last year, but more importantly, Texas fans will see that there is a different culture on campus, that although I will agree with you, Brandon, that the way Charlie Strong was exactly treated at Texas wasn't completely fair to Charlie Strong.
It wasn't
I do
fair.
not think
it was not fair.
He was not given the chances that he should have been given, and was kind of, I don't want to say blackballed, but he was kind of put behind the 8 ball in his situation and his overall time at Texas. However, fans will see different culture. They will begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel. And if this Texas team could add a 6-7 win season, with one of those wins being against hated rival Oklahoma, because we'll get to Oklahoma next week, but the thing I want to mention with that game, because we're talking about Texas, Yeah, they've got Baker Mayfield. Both of those teams have quarterbacks coming in that are experienced from last year and new head coaches as from different routes. Tom Herman coming from the Group of 5 rank, previously at coordinator with Ohio State. Then you got Ridley with the Oklahoma Sooners taking over as the head coach after being the offensive coordinator after Bob Stoops, kind of stepped down this offseason in shocking news. So that'll be a game that kind of has a similar storyline for both teams heading into it.
I think you're right. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna be exciting, and why should it not be an exciting season for the Texas Longhorns? They have a lot to look forward to. You would think, and I think there's a lot of people out there that think there's no way Texas has another losing season. Not after the last couple of seasons that they've had of I think nothing else would characterize it better than the word turmoil. And that's what it's felt like. When
Texas fans want to get back to the Mac Brown days.
But when they want to get back to where there wasn't this, man, is Texas going to be good this year? Or they want to know how good is Texas going to be this year?
Exactly. The Mac Brown days.
That's exactly it. And I mean, I feel for you because I feel for, anybody who's been in the situation where it's like, when is it going to happen again? You were at greatness, you felt greatness, you tasted it, you liked it, you lived as a king in it, and then you fell off and you were homeless for a little bit, and now you're trying to find the right home and the right fit and feel again like you can win again, you can do things again, and you can be that powerhouse, and Texas has a really good opportunity to do that. They have the pieces in place. I really do believe that they have the right head coach. I know I read that to you earlier, but it didn't necessarily. It wasn't an opinion of mine. It was
opinion
just
of
the article.
Writers.
I think they have the right guy. Tom Herman did a lot of good while he was at Houston. He put Houston on the map. He made people talk about the Houston Cougars. Was anyone talking about them before Tom Herman was there?
Not many.
And really giving them, making them have a push and give them a run and stuff like that. No one was really talking about them before that. And now they're talking about Tom Herman, a guy who they weren't talking about as much before he started to have success with Houston.
The only time I heard the Houston Cougars mentioned, and you guys out there in comment section land, help me out on a name because my computer had died, but it was the quarterback before Tom Herman's time. There was a really good quarterback at Houston that was probably like I remember him as like an air raid type guy where he was just slinging. He scored a bunch of touchdown passes through the air. That's all I remember, and that was the only time I remember hearing about the Houston Cougars before Tom Herman was even there. It might have been a few years before Tom Herman was there, but that was the only time I heard of them. The thing that I want to end this with, though, is like you said, I think they have the right guy as well. And as Texas Longhorn fans, I know how you feel with what Brandon was saying. I know it's a different sport, but being a Chicago Bulls fan, I know exactly how you feel. For me, it might be a little bit different than you because we do have the age gap. But growing up as a kid, feeling that greatness of championship, and then in my college years, the greatness of, we didn't win any championships, but Derrick Rose bringing us the number 1 seeds, and it's like, man, it wasn't a question of will the Bulls make the playoffs? It was how good are we going to be? Now it's a question of is Hoiberg going to get us to the playoffs, and we're trading all our talent, but that is for a different podcast. I'm just telling you, I understand how you feel. I understand how you feel in that regard from that fandom. I could bring it out and kind of be similar to you for a second. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this whole shindig up?
My final thought is, and it's to have you, the fans, be able to kind of crunch on this a little bit as well, is that if Charlie Strong would have been with Texas this season, it would have been his, rookie? Third, fourth season?
Third.
With Texas?
I want to say his third season.
If Texas comes out and has a successful season, will people then look and say, Charlie Strong was doing some things right? Because these are Charlie Strong's guys. And it didn't quite get to reach him, but his guys were the right guys. They were in place. He was recruiting well. It took him a little bit longer. The curve was a little bit longer, but he was able to get there in what he did. He's no longer there, obviously. But was he on to something there? And was he truly railroaded in the way that they treated him there at Texas? But then at the same time, too, that means that could be a really good starting point for then new head coach Tom Herman to be able to build off of that, and the veteran presence that's going to be at Texas this year, which is going to be huge, especially on the defensive side of the football, is Tom Herman can build off of that, build his program. We know what he's been able to do at Houston, and Texas football could really be seeing some very, very good days ahead.
Yeah, and exactly the thing that I kind of go off of that is that I don't think it'll be exactly, man, Charlie Strong really had something going. It'll be, wow, we had the talent on the field. See what this guy's able to do with it. I knew we should have got rid of Charlie Strong. I think that's what most of the, not pundits, but most of the outcry will be. But I want to flip it onto you guys. Let us know down below, what do you think about Tom Herman this year, about the Texas Longhorns, about my bold prediction. They're going to beat Oklahoma this year. Mark it down in the calendars right now. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. If you're on YouTube watching or if you're on Blog Talk Radio listening to the podcast, we love all of you guys each and every week. Brandon and I will be back next week to finish up the Big 12. And then the week after that, Brandon, we're not just making our college football playoff predictions. We're making our Heisman predictions. We're doing everything prediction-wise that next week to get you guys ready for the first week of games in the college football season. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening one more time. And as always, have a good day, everybody.